Let's begin with a mix of Ultramarine Blue and Alizarin Crimson. It can be really any dark blue, but I want you to make this mix very soupy and transparent. So first thing is you're gonna make, this is very loose and very light. As you can see, it's very light to the touch. We're gonna make these kind of measurements or figures in here. So just block in these shapes, and just bear in mind this is the middle of the canvas, so it's to the left. We get this sort of a darker area, and we are gonna make some darker accents here. And this purplish color with blue and red, you can mix different kinds or different proportions, and sometimes it's gonna be bluer and sometimes it's gonna be sort of more reddish in color. But the point is this has to be dark, and it's just placing some shapes right now on the surface of the canvas. And this is an 8x10, and I am using acrylic paints for this particular tutorial. All right, so once we have sort of, just established some lines that are going to be useful, you will see why. Bear with me because the paintings usually change a lot as we go along, and there's always an ugly stage. So I'm hoping that at the end you will actually like this painting a lot. All right, so we're gonna move on to a phase where we start making a bit more definition on the shapes. Now, what we're painting on the top is basically a bridge, and it's in the far of the painting. So we're going to make this is the mixture which has basically Ultramarine Blue and Alizarin Crimson, a tiny bit of yellow. I love using the Indian yellow, but if you don't have Indian yellow, you can use yellow ochre. And again, this is very transparent. We're just putting these shapes in the back. So this is the way that we're gonna start making this particular painting. And just follow me and you will slowly start to see how it's taking some shape. I am adding a little bit more of the yellow and a little bit of the Alizarin Crimson. I'm sorry that I cannot show you the mixing of the colors because of the way that I have the camera right now. I cannot show you the palette, but I will be telling you what I'm doing. So just put a straight line. This is a bridge. So in the bridge, we're gonna have a darker area, and this is also in the bottom of the bridge. The darker area now is a little bit less of water. And again, the three colors mixed in different proportions. You can choose, if you want it more blue or if you want it more reddish or more yellowish. That's really your style. But the important thing is mix all three colors. In my case, I'm getting this, and it was not on purpose, just I'm getting it. It seems to be more reddish than anything else. So this is basically what I'm doing. And then this is gonna be the water. So in the water, feel free to just put wiggly lines. Now with a little bit more of water in your mix, we are going to make this back end. It's going to be reflecting buildings on the back. So we're gonna make it sort of purplish color, and we're gonna make this wiggly. So eventually, when we put the color of the water, this is going to look more like true water. If you put a little bit more of the yellow and the red, it comes with more of a brownish color, which is what I wanted to try adding here, a bit more of that yellowish brown color made with orange, that is your red, and your yellow. Again, very transparent. As you can see here, this is still transparent. It's what we call transparent wash. And eventually we will be getting a little bit more of thicker paint on top. And in the back, we can start defining a bit these particular colors. Now we're gonna go to the bottom of this particular canvas. And I want you to make a dark color. You can mix all three, but for a darker effect, put a little bit more of the blue. And as you can see, I'm using a rather, it's not a small brush, but it's not like the largest brush that you could be using. But if you want to use a very tiny brush, try to avoid that. Try to go for a larger brush if you can. Actually, I would like to have a larger brush here, even though it's an 8x10 canvas. The larger the brush, the less you go into small details. And what I'm doing off camera is mixing my colors. Sorry, this came a bit loud. So we're gonna make a shape here and very dark on this end. So we're gonna darken this area here. And also there is a dark area here that you are going to put. Just make sure that you sort of in line with, I'm gonna make this here. Once you start seeing how the painting goes, you will get the image better. And you know, the acrylic paints actually dry very quickly. So it's a good thing is you can start adding layers to your colors. And I want you to do this very, very loose. And as you can see, it's not thick yet. It's truly washy color. But I wanted to put this a bit darker. And acrylics actually will dry darker. But this has a lot of water in it. So I just want you to make sure that we are not using thick paint. Not yet, okay? All right, so now here we continue making this dark color, and I want you to join this dark here with this dark. So it is better, I mean, that's my choice. I prefer not to tell you what we are painting yet. Now, if I managed to do a good job with the video and posted it, you would have seen in the YouTube main page the idea of what we are painting, but I don't want to show it to you while we're doing the painting. I just want you to very loosely put all of these dark colors. As you can see, it's sort of a purplish color. I hope that it shows really purplish, because that's what you want to do, sort of a purple with a tiny bit of yellow, and you vary the amounts of reds and you vary the amount of blue that you're gonna put in this particular darker color. So once you get your darks, and so far I have not washed my brush. We're gonna get into there soon to wash the brush. But for now, this is what you should be seeing. It's dark areas here. They disappear here because we're gonna have some lighter shadows here, but this is gonna be basically in light. The light's coming from the right hand side. All right, so once you're done with this, make sure that you wash your brushes. Acrylic paints are not like oils, obviously, but if you don't wash your brushes frequently, and especially when you change colors, you make sure that you wash it with plenty of water. It's just water. These are non-toxic, so this is very good for the environment too. But if you let it sit, it will ruin your brushes. So it takes time, but as you can see with a paper towel, I'm cleaning this until it's really clean. And I can continue using the same brush throughout the whole painting if I want to. So far, we have not introduced white at all in this painting, but I am now going to start making some mixes that have a little bit of white in it. So far, it's red, blue, yellow, and white. The ones I use are Ultramarine Blue, Alizarin Crimson as red, and the Indian yellow is my yellow. However, you can use any red, blue, and white combination that you prefer. If you have other red, blue, and yellow in your particular set, you can go ahead and use them. Maybe the exact colors are not going to be matched to mine, but you will be able to match something that's similar. And also you can make the actual final colors your own colors. Sorry about talking so much, but while I'm talking, I'm actually preparing a light violet with what I had before for the dark violet, and on my palette, I just added white. And that's because I want to make these buildings in the back. Now we're getting a bit thicker. So this sort of a cityscape should be lighter in color because it's in the back. And when you go to things that are far from us, they get bluer and they also get lighter in color. The closer we are to the image, so things in this area are going to have more contrast, and they are going to be with more color, less white. Or if there is white, it's going to be in contrast with very dark colors. So believe me, this is going to eventually, hopefully, look like a cityscape. So the next thing that we're going to mix is adding a little bit of yellow to that purple color. Gives us a gray, sort of a gray color. In this gray color, we are going to be using for some of these areas in the bridge. So we're not making very specific construction, but it's going to be looking like a structure here, and eventually it's going to be truly looking like a bridge. Now, I did want these reflections in the water to be more sort of brownish color. I will be reinstating that darker line that I lost in there. So because I wanted more brown, brown is made with basically orange. Brown is basically an orange that has a tiny bit of blue. And that's what I am mixing right now. It's sort of an orangey color that has a little bit of blue and a little bit of white. So you can see how, it's a little bit less green, because I think that was way too green for the reflections. All right. So let's start getting some green colors with your yellow, and yes, we're gonna mix it with red and blue. So it's the same three colors, but for a green, you can use a little bit more of the blue. Go slowly, but mix it on top of your orange that you already had, and you get a nice color that will be red as this is sort of an autumn scene, so you do have some grasses in here that are going to have some of this orangey color, and we're going to start using that orangey color on top of the darker areas. So now we're painting everything, it's on top of this darker area, and we're mixing this particular sort of a dead grass or more of an autumn grass color, and we're going to be adding a bit more of the yellow with a tiny bit of white. So when we do that, we're going to get a bit less transparent because the white adds a little less transparent, but you can still see the dark underneath, which is the idea of the painting. So you're going to be seeing that, and you're going to be doing this grass here. This is all a grassy area, and we're getting, with the brush strokes, you get the idea of how the grass is growing. And like I said, there's an ugly stage to paintings, and there's nothing that is really, oops, I hope that you can see what I'm doing. There's nothing that's really wrong. Everything can be corrected in your paintings. So don't despair if something is not happening. Just wait, acrylics dry, and you can actually paint on top of what you didn't like. So just go on and don't give up. You will have fun, enjoy, and hopefully get a nice painting out of this exercise. Well, exercise or final painting, whatever you want to call this. So now I've made a little bit of a gray, just putting everything I had on my palette, and it's sort of a gray, and I'm going to just add it in here. This color, I cannot tell you exactly how it's mixed because it's just everything I had in my palette. I just put it all together. And eventually, if I find out a better way to show these with my mixes, you could see my mixes. But, you know, in a way, make the mixes your own mixes. So this was everything I had. And like I mentioned, you know, when you go to the back, it's going to be bluer usually than in the front, and it's going to have less contrast. So less dark, that's what I mean, except under the bridge. So under the bridge, I do want to have something that's going to be really dark, because that's a very dark area. All right, so now I'm going to make some highlights on the bridge. Because this is something that I was seeing, and I'll show you the scene. And here we are going to have a little bit more light color grass. So mixing with the gray that I had before, which looks almost like a brown on top of the purple. We are now getting into the area where we are going to put eventually the highlights, the lighter lights. So I'm still using all the smudges that I had between violets and grays, and I have, you know, the different puddles in my mixes, and I'm just using that to create some softer shadows here and here, softer shadows, and over here, so that we can start getting this grassy hill reading correctly with shape. So it's darker in the bottom because we have these trees and they are darker in the bottom, and where the light's hitting, they get lighter. They do get lighter also in the areas. So if the light's coming from here, these areas are going to be lighter but not as light as these areas here. So in your puddle where you have a little bit less of the dark color, you start using that particular lighter mixture to give this the sensation of a shape, right? And you can see how I am actually doing the brush strokes, going up, going down, but going in general direction is the direction of those leaves, because those are sort of grasses. So I want to create now, and I haven't actually cleaned my brush again. I'm using the same brush. It has many different colors on it, and that's what you can do too, unless you want to really clean your brush and have cleaner colors. In nature, it looks a bit cartoonish if you have very bright blue and yellow, but if you have mixes like the ones we've been making in this particular video, they do tend to look more natural colors. So for instance, I've just made a little bit of a green. This is way too green. So adding a tiny bit of red makes it look a bit more normal or sort of natural green, and sometimes not mixing all of it completely in your brush allows you to have some areas of sort of non-mixed color. That's choice if you like that, but you know, we're making these to look greenish in some areas, and we will eventually put some lights with more of the yellow and the white. Now here in this corner I'm going to make it darker, because usually in the corners you don't want to have a very bright spot. It will sort of make everybody's eye go to that bright spot, and that's not what you want. You want people to look at your focal point, which is going to be somewhere around here. So again, same green. I'm just brushing it so that you start getting the idea that these are sort of, I don't know what kind of plant this is, but it's the bushy, sort of a wild. Maybe somebody knows exactly what this is, but I don't know exactly how to call this one. All right, so now we're gonna get a little bit brighter yellow and white. We're gonna mix those two, and this is gonna give us a very light white color. I think I put too much white. White is like salt. It really makes the flavor of your food wonderful. Once you add salt, you cannot get it out. So with white, be careful, always use smaller amounts. So now let's see. We're gonna make this pop with some areas of light. Because the light is coming from the right, and it was actually shining really nicely on this bushes, or, and you know, use your own kind of hand movement to create these brush strokes. It's like a signature. It's like your own way of writing. Yeah. So we're gonna put some of these bright areas, and these are coming here, so that against the very dark background, it really pops the painting. And again, take another big lump of it and start putting your grasses in here. In the front, you get the chance to define these shapes a bit better because we are closer so we can see them better. And in real life, contrary to, well, photographs are real life too because they are not, they are real life. But in photographs, what happens is that oftentimes you have everything is in focus. But when you're seeing the scene, the things in farther from you are not in focus. And the things that are closer to you or the things that you are paying more attention to are in focus. So remember that when you're painting, that if you're painting something in the back, we tend to see everything in the back and we tend to focus so much on that it's now in focus. But it shouldn't be. In a painting, choose the areas that you want to have more definition and choose the areas that you don't want to have that much definition. So the ones that you want more defined, you can paint. But I'm not actually trying to paint every single blade of grass. I'm just trying to catch the attention of the grass. And if you noticed, I put a little bit of blue in here so that I'm changing just a little bit from this one that's more yellow. And then in here, I'm just adding, this is gonna be much less defined with some areas of light and some areas that are not gonna be as light as the others because they are in the back. So I don't wanna have that much contrast with these. So I just added a little bit of my mix from before. And then just small areas of brightness in the back, not necessarily too defined. And when you add these areas of light in your paintings, the more contrast, the more realistic it looks like. Well, I think. Not that you think this is going to be quite realistic. This is going to be the impression of a painting with acrylics. All right. So I'm just softening a bit with water, just softening that. I'm going to get a clean brush, same size, clean water, and just brush that so that I don't lose that dark in there. Actually, I can re-establish that dark. So I just made a little bit of a mix with red and blue, and I am just adding it right there. I want that to be darker. I want that to be dark. So I'm now re-establishing some areas of dark in here. That will make our bush sit on earth. So re-establishing some areas of dark. And the reason I used the new brush is because I wanted to have a clean brush first, but you could easily just use the same brush. Just make sure that you clean it thoroughly before changing colors, because once we have the white in the mix, it will make mud when you try to make a dark. So by establishing these darks, it helps the lights to pop up a little better. And I like to have it a little bit more reddish on that end. Don't know why. So you can have it more reddish or more bluer. It's really your choice. How do you want to look at it? And this one here needs to have a bit more contrast. I think by adding this yellow the way I did, it just looks like a blotch in there. So I want to establish that yellow popping really hard by making these shades under the light more, establish them better. So we started light, and now we are applying the paint with almost no water. I mean, it does have a little bit of water to move the paint, but it's almost right out of the tube. So just making sure that we reestablish with black. I mean, normally people say you paint from dark to light, but what I say is you paint whatever you need to paint. So as I mentioned, I put the lights, and I think these lights were probably too bulky. They shape just didn't read very well according to what I wanted. So that's what you can, with acrylics, honestly, they dry so fast that you can go light to dark and dark to light. It's not the same as with oils, where you actually paint on wet paint because they take so long to dry. So you use different techniques, and it's just knowing what each technique allows you to do, and then you can have fun with all of these techniques. I love painting with oils, and it's hard actually once you've been painting with oils to go back to acrylics, because you tend to forget that the acrylics dry so quickly. So I'm making this, you can see, a little bit less light because it was at the edge of my painting. Now I think it is a bit too red, so I have this color that was like the muddy color that I had before, and it's not as bright. It's on the edge of the canvas, and my dark is still wet, so I can sort of blend it a little bit so that it doesn't look completely like a square block. And I'm gonna put some accents in here of this sort of gray violet that we already had mixed. So all of the mixes that I have in the palette is the ones that I've been showing you and creating. So you just go, back and forth, and you establish things again. You can paint on top like I'm doing right now. And honestly, I had no idea how this painting's gonna come out. This is not paint by numbers. I don't know exactly how it's gonna come out. I have a photograph that I have not shown you, where I am using as an example. I found this to be a bit too blue now that I'm looking at it, and I'm adding the mixture that had a bit more red. Red brings things closer to us. Blue brings things farther away. The whole theory about that is because there's more atmosphere between us and what's far away. Just take a look at nature next time you take a walk. We are in COVID time, second wave. It's now the month of November 2020, so you might be in an area where you have to stay in lockdown, may not have the opportunity to walk about. But next time you walk about, if you are in an area that you're not in lockdown and you can walk, take a look at nature and how things, when you go farther, you think that you are seeing things in certain color, but realize it's very blue in the back. It's not really, the green mountains are not really green. They're very blue. So I'm just follow. You can make this painting and make the painting your own. Decide how much you want. By painting the black, you can see that I'm bringing those sort of bright leaves to the front, or this is called negative painting, when we paint around, for instance here, and I am defining these blades of grass by doing the negative painting. And in here, we're gonna start getting the dark area again, established again. So I am using my puddle of dark area. With the darker is for this particular use of just red, yellow, and blue. Your darkest dark is gonna be the violet, blue, and red. And there's no, unique formula or secret formula for how to get it the best way. What I like to do is, in this case, I want it really dark, so I'm just trying it with maybe same amount of red and blue. I'm saying maybe because I have no idea. I don't measure that. I just see the end result and I see that it's very dark. So that's what I want, and I want to paint this bridge and the dark accents on the bridge. And I don't want to make a very fine definition of the particular structure or architecture of this bridge. I just want to give the impression that there's a bridge here and impression that there's some buildings in the back, and maybe the bridge had some areas in here. So with that, I think we're almost ready. So to paint, I'm just going to be cleaning the brushes again so that you don't. We're going to start painting the lighter areas, and first clean your brush. And for this you need to have several buckets of water and of course a lot of paper towel. You want to make sure, so I had 2 brushes that I was using, and please don't let them dry. I hate throwing out brushes, especially once I find the ones I like. These are particular nice, very, very nice for, sorry, I thought I was showing this, sorry. These are very, very nice for acrylics. These are synthetic. I think it's called Taclon. And the brand is actually Royal, let me see. Royal and Langnickel. I don't know how it's pronounced. I think it's a British company. So they're really nice, but again, it depends on how much you care for them. So take care of them. Now we're gonna get a bunch of white and a tiny, tiny bit of blue, right? And we're gonna mix that blue and white. There's very few areas here of sky, but they are there. So you have now a very light blue, and we're gonna sort of get into here with that blue to create sort of a cityscape. We have there some buildings, and there's some light in between these buildings. So just little tiny pieces of paint, and you can create the buildings that you want. I mean, this is your painting and it's an imaginary, of course it's not, I know where I took this photo, but in your case it's an imaginary landscape or cityscape, and you can decide how much sky you want. But in this case I thought it would be nicer to have less sky and just focus on this. So just adding those little areas, it can make the impression that you do have some buildings in the back. Acrylics dry, I think I did mention this, but acrylics dry darker, and I think this is a bit too dark, but we can go over that later. You can always add white on top. Okay, so now we're gonna make the same blue that we had, but we're gonna make a little tiny bit of the yellow. And what I want you to do is the yellow with the blue and the white is going to give us, hopefully, a sort of a turquoise blue, something that looks like this. And we are going to start painting here. It's this particular area of the water is reflecting. Oh, this should be like this. So this particular area is reflecting the sky. And wiggle it because it's the reflections of the water. And then if we want to just make sure, well, those buildings are farther away, so this is probably just reflecting some trees in here that I had in the original painting. So I'm gonna make, we're gonna make those trees now. So it's just a very nice way of making sure that it looks like water. I'm going to probably add a little bit more of the blue and a little bit, just a tiny bit of the yellow, because I think it's looking a bit too light, although it dries lighter. But this is now what I am sort of making, and you can see that I don't have everything well mixed, so that we can put some just touches of it. Now we're gonna go a bit lighter here. And when you're painting, I mean, this is the shadow. So there's a shadow and there's a reflection of the bridge. And then I also had this kind of reflection too. So we're going to make sure that the reflections make sense in terms of what they are reflecting. So again, with the water here, we are going to make the idea of the edges of these particular bushes. All right, so I need to make a little bit more. I think I made too little of that blue, and we need to make some blue here. As you can see, it's just touches of it. I have a lot of it on my brush, and get into those leaves there. Now this we're gonna make the reflection. So now this blue is a bit darker. It's just little pieces of blue. Some of them are darker than others. Some will make some lighter, and that's how you're gonna make the impression of water. Okay, so I think now we need to get some more white to pop those areas. And usually I don't like using white because it's a color that can make things dull. So I like to put the white. In the case of the waters, it has yellow and blue. So pick up a lot of it. It's not pure white, as I mentioned. And just, you know, as you can see, I'm really going on the surface, just sort of kissing the surface, and don't make very long strokes. And that way, you know, it looks more like running water, or, you know, flowing. And you can switch the brush. I mean, I'm using a I don't know how this is called, but it's not a straight brush, but you could use a filbert, you could use any brush. I mean, honestly, brushes is the way, is like using different pens for writing. Your writing is, I mean, there's probably some preferences. People have preferences on pens. I know my sister does. But in general, any brush, as long as you get used to how to use your own brushes, can work well. Size matters. I recommend you, oh sorry, I just hit the camera. I recommend you not to use very small ones. This is a very nice size for the size of the canvas. Okay, so now we got the water there. And it's always good to sort of brush it a little bit on the back too. That was too much. So with a clean brush, this is larger, I am just gonna clean that, what I did, but sort of leaving a little bit of that. As you can see on the movements, is vertical and horizontal, and maybe just drag a little bit on those edges. This is a clean brush, as I mentioned, so that these reflections are not as strong or dark, and it does give the impression, hopefully, that there is some water running. Okay, I'm cleaning that brush so that I keep that large, big brush clean. Well, we're almost done. I don't want to do a lot of details, but remember that we said there seems to be some probably trees or bushes that I may be missing. So I'm going to make that purple with the sort of a greenish color that I had. So these reflections make a little bit of sense here. So I'm gonna sort of try to put a little bit of a tree in there. And then here, there's probably another tree that is reflecting, because this is a reflection. No, that's a reflection that's from the farther away. So this should be from the buildings. I'm wrong. This is the shade and this is the reflection of the bridge. So the reflection of the bridge did need a little bit of a structure there. And what may be missing here is a structure on, I'm sorry, I'm hitting the camera because this is the first time I have this set up, and I'm sorry about that. Okay, now dark. Because I'm seeing this reflection here, so there must be some sort of a wall in here. And what we are going to do now is, I think this one here is very strange. So I know I see it in the photo, so I don't know where it's coming from. So let's just open this up. I don't know, it just looks strange. I mean, if you like it, you can keep it. But it just sort of looked like, where is that coming from? I don't know. Okay. So now we're going to use a little bit of the light color that we had for the sky with a little bit more of yellow. And we're going to pop some areas on the bridge. So for instance, if there's some, we said this is something on the bridge that's coming here. So let's just make that show, and then this bridge has some areas that are popping up with some bright color. And a little bit of this lighter whitish color, we're gonna make it here. Sometimes in the sky is a little bit yellow, especially in the horizon. So I just want to make sure that we follow the idea that this is the bright area, a little bit more light with white and yellow. I don't use the, I think I mentioned that several times, I don't use the white alone. So this is white with a little bit of yellow, and maybe just a bit of that white in these areas will pop those better. I need to get a little bit more white because I finished it, but we are almost done. I hope that you are enjoying this, and if you are, you can subscribe to my channel. I have several different educational videos in there, mostly are immunology and biology, but I like painting, and yeah, I do a little bit of painting tutorials. Not being a painter myself, I think it's always good to know that people are enthusiastic and everybody likes learning. This is a little bit, it's white with just a tiny bit of the yellow, but it's not white alone, and I don't know why it's looking blue, so I think I'm gonna add a bit more yellow to it. And it depends on your own colors and your own mixes. Sometimes the way that the colors look on the palette is not the same way they look on the canvas. So it's good to test and try. There we go. I think this is gonna pop these lights better. And of course the yellow, you know, brings the sunlight, even though this was a fall scene. It's not a summery scene, but those lights on those particular areas of the bush were really popping when I was walking by. This was on my bicycle ride in the morning, and it's a very nice park near where I live. You can find scenes like this everywhere. Life is beautiful, gorgeous. Make the best out of life. Always be positive. And let's pop some more of this white with yellow here, a little bit more here. Just some areas, you know, sometimes if you do it closer to the darker area, the light pops a lot more. But just choose your areas where you want that light to pop, and the rest leave it less defined. It's good, like, you know, these areas here really pop because it's right by the dark area. So that is a nice way of telling the viewer of your painting where to look, because the contrast drives people's eyes towards the scene, and you tell them with your colors and your mixes where to look. So I'm just going to use my dark color here to make this a bit darker, and this had the purple before, so I didn't wash that one yet. Again, if you are painting fast, you can do this. You can not necessarily wash your brushes constantly, but if you are not, if you're painting slow, and this happens when you start, when you're a beginner, it may take you longer time, especially to make the mixes of the colors. Don't let those brushes dry. I think that just a little bit here, that dark thing that I have no idea what it is, but it seems to be reflecting, and then this is supposed to be so I think I made it wrong. So let's correct it. Well, it's good sometimes to make mistakes on camera, because this was actually part of the water. So one thing we can do is with a clean brush, just take away what I just did, bring it back to where it was. We will clean that up with clean water, clean brush. Like I said, the good thing about acrylics is that they dry fast, so you can get rid of the layers that you just put. And I think what happens is this one here should be smaller. So if you see, just with the water in the clean brush, I'm just pushing and making that particular thing sort of, this is what I think is reflecting there. So that's what I just did. I'm glad that I made a little bit of a mistake. I don't paint by numbers. In other words, I don't know exactly how things are gonna come out. So it's difficult for me to create a video with the painting, because I really had no idea what I was gonna be showing at the very end. I think it's come out fine. Now I'm going to re-establish the light in there. So I just had that mixture of white and yellow with a tiny bit of blue, so that I re-establish that light area in there. And then here, the sky is where, so vertical line, vertical, and then horizontal for the water is a good trick for making sure that it does look like water. And like I said in the past, I wanted to bring a little bit of that water reflection or sensation of water in the back, even though we have the sort of the reflections of the buildings in the back. And then this is the one that's the darker one, but it almost doesn't have paint. So just to make them a bit looser, a bit less notable, but so that it gives the impression of water. And there's one last thing that I don't think it works very well. Go on your dark mix, that dark purple, and use the dark color, the dark brush. And I'm just going to re-establish that dark in there. Like I said, white is like salt. Once you put white, it is much easier in acrylics and oils to paint from dark to light, which is what we just did in this tutorial. All right, so I think we're done. It's a nice river painting. I hope you like it and that you enjoyed it. And it actually took me about an hour. I'm really surprised it took me this little time. I hope you enjoy it and thank you for joining. If you like it, just check my YouTube channel and subscribe. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.